Our document said that the concentration of iron floc, or iron in itself coming into the lake, is so high that it poses a toxic threat to the lower strata biota, okay? And EPA told us when we went to Chicago, the EPA said if in fact you are not able to determine at the center of the lake on a surface reading that the level of phosphorus exceeds the state standards, go into the inlet. Take the water that's coming through the ditch itself, which is determined to be a navigable stream, and there the ratings are high. Let us know what those ratings are, and then we can monitor the state's ability or even maybe refusing to make concessions and to help the filtration from that portion of the marsh. The department prides itself on using ecosystem management techniques until it comes into this situation and there is a separation. We've been told this is a management plan for your lake now. It does not have that much authority to make any kind of determinations for the Powell Marsh. What we're trying to do now is to say, no, that's not the case. If you're going to use this research with all the work that we put in, the money that we put in, and the money that you put in as the state, it's a reputable study. Let's look at it as an ecological system, not independently. So that's the point we're trying to make. Any comments?
Gail.
Mary.
Yes.
I appreciate the fact where you have noted the study is a progressive extension of the USGS hydrological investigation of Powell Marsh and its relation to dip Pike. I appreciate the fact that this old study, this study that has caused so much trouble for us, is placed side by side with Barr's information, with our new information. They're side by side now, and they're put together, one following the other, and the information clarifies from one document. It's clarified in the next, I think, corrected and clarified.
I couldn't have said it better.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Now, the main issue, let me just bring you up to date. The main issue with that USGS study was they had made it determined they were using what they call piezometers, which are instruments that go into the ground and measure the groundwater flow. They took no measurements whatsoever of the surface water, okay? From that, they extrapolated that 75% of the water that we receive in our lake comes from groundwater, and only 25% comes from surface water, okay? The study that we did, well, the argument was, no matter what we do with that marsh, it's not going to improve the water quality in your lake, because you're still going to get 75% of that water coming in from groundwater, and it's going to carry that iron and make the iron floc in your lake, okay? Lo and behold, Barr study, in which we were out there twice a week in the inlet and the outlet, measuring what was coming in and out of our lake, we were able to extrapolate from that, and the study found that it was exactly the opposite. 67% of the water that we get in our lake comes from surface water. Only 23% comes from groundwater. So we can turn around and say to them, if in fact you improve the filtration of that surface water by restoring the marsh, you bet it's going to help the water quality in our lake. So it's a reversal of that whole thing. And they have approved this because they examined the Barr report, and they're on record as saying that they're looking at the validity of that report in terms of the balance of surface and groundwater with more authority than they are the USGS. So that's a major kind of kudo.
That was from
For
Dr.
us.
Pearson of the DNR.
Right, the DNR themselves are the ones that said it.
And then
Just-
along with that, when we know the groundwater wasn't affecting the lake, because when they shut off the marsh, the only water we were basically getting from the lake was the groundwater. Well, the Secchi Disc went to 17.5 feet of clarity. Well, if we were getting floc from groundwater, boy, how would we get that? It'd be impossible.
Yes. I'll tell you, the Secchi Disc readings, historically, have just been a great boon to us. A great boon, and they need a lot of credit for having that information available for us. So I'm just listing the major science findings. Mary, thank you. You've already led me through the first one. The second, the toxicity. Remember, our document said that the concentration of iron floc, or iron in itself coming into the lake, is so high that it poses a toxic threat to the lower strata biota, okay? And this is an extremely important finding. The rebuttal that we got from the department itself was indicating that in effect it needs a certain pH level for that to really happen, and that pH level is not there that often, so we don't need to worry about it. But in the video, which you're going to be seeing, Dr. Redig addresses that issue, I think, quite directly, and you will be pleased to see that. The water fluctuations, we haven't talked a lot about the hydrology as a part of the study. But if we look at what we have in terms of a natural setting, in drought periods, the water is being withheld by these people because they want to hold the water level in their reserves or in their ponds or whatever we're going to call them, until the end of the season. So in a drought situation, they offer very little water to us. If in fact this spring, they even opened up Vista Pond. They've got 14 different water control structures out there that they're manually manipulating, making determinations as to how much water we will receive or how much water we will not receive. If this spring we would have had a major rain event and got 2-3 inches of rain, it would have flooded the lake again. And some of you have had problems with your boats, the docks lifting off, etc. That fluctuation, if in fact the marsh is restored, not only will the filtration of that water be improved, but the wide variation that we have in water levels will also be modified, simply because the marsh will be able to do that for us. And the phosphorus loading. A quick word on what the EPA told us when we went to Chicago. The EPA said if in fact you are not able to determine at the center of the lake on a surface reading that the level of phosphorus exceeds the state standards, go into the inlet. Take the water that's coming through the ditch itself, which is determined to be a navigable stream, and there the ratings are high. Let us know what those ratings are, and then we can monitor the state's ability or even maybe refusing to make concessions and to help the filtration from that portion of the marsh. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I would like to comment one thing. The guy I was thinking of was Jim Creighton. And we've only talked to about 50 different people on this situation in DNR. And we go back a few years when we were on the lake, and he was the biologist for the DNR, and he was saying that the walleye aren't reproducing because there's not enough oxygen in the lake. We were in a boat with him and Dr. Ensign from the University of Wisconsin, who they called in and said we had to accept everything he took. Said, well, it all was in favor of ours, so they threw it out. Well, when we're out there, Dr. Ensign says, Jim, you have your meter here with you right now. Let's check the oxygen level in the lake. He said, oh, sure. He brought it out, dropped it down. He says the oxygen level is tremendous. So that blew his theory that our walleye weren't reproducing because of the oxygen.
One of the questions I think we might get when we make the presentation of what originally was a lake management plan is how in the world can you ask us to incorporate this into the Powell Marsh, which they view as a separate entity. And of course we would like to be able to look at it as an ecosystem. So I was wondering what kind of a response you would give to that.
Well, the reality is this really started as a lake management plan. But as we got into the investigation and got the information from Barr Engineering, and went through all of the research, it turns out that really the source of the problem was the Paul Marsh. And this is where the iron was coming from. This was affecting the lake quality. And the only way that we look at the lake management plan now is Paul Marsh is having an effect on it. And if we don't do anything about Paul Marsh, we really can't do anything about the lake. Right. But initially, yes, it was to manage the lake. We found where the problem was, and we have to deal with it. It's the same. If I diagnose something, I have to find out what the source of the problem is. I have to choose the right antibiotic for the right bacteria. I have to find the source of the problem and treat it.
Right.
This is where we're at.